Hi there everyone, welcome to thunderbaytrees.ca. My name is Jay, and today on episode 37 I figured maybe we should talk about planting a tree. I've kind of hinted at planting trees probably through many of the episodes, but I haven't actually put one in the ground. So today we're going to put in a cherry tree, and this one here comes in a pot. And typically there's three main ways that trees and shrubs will come to you, either in a pot like this. Imagine that, and typically most garden centers, this is how they package their material. Also balled and burlapped, and you may have seen them before, where the root ball, where the roots are kind of wrapped and drum laced, almost looks like a drum, so to speak, with burlap. And then the third way is bare root, and typically garden centers do not sell, for the most part, do not sell tree stock, just with bare roots. So in garden centers, typically this is the type you'll find in a pot. And you might be thinking it's now near the end of October in Thunder Bay, and you might be thinking it's a little bit late for planting trees this time of year. Ideally, the best time might be between, I don't know, maybe Labor Day to Thanksgiving. So it's a little bit late. However, the trick about this time of year, which makes this type of year great, is that garden centers are trying to get rid of their stock. So you can typically get plants and shrubs, trees and shrubs at about 50% off. So with a little bit of extra care, making sure it gets lots of water now until the ground freezes, you can get a real great bargain on a tree. So we got this cherry tree. Now you can tell here that you may not be able to see here, but it was root grafted, so it has a different rootstock than the stem here, and you can see a bit of a bulge right in there, and that's where the grower attached the stem to a hardier rootstock, so a rootstock that should hopefully do well in northern Ontario weather. So the first thing we want to do is dig the hole before we even start taking things out of pots, and typically you want to dig this. Dig the hole about 2 to 3 times the diameter of the pot. So if you take a look at the pot, it's about, what is that, a foot roughly, I guess, or 9 inches, whatever it is. You want to dig it at least 2 to 3 times out, and sort of just to overturn the soil. And by stirring up that soil as we dig, it will help the tree establish, and it will help the tree's roots invade into the new soil, or its new home. So we just dig away here. Now when you're digging the hole, like I said, about 2 to 3 times out, but also the depth, you want it at about the root flare. So if you're looking at the stem, where it sort of flares out, and in this case, where the flare is, it appears to be about where the graft is. So that's perfect. So right where that little knob is, sort of where sort of the stem goes and then flares out, that's about where you want it to be lined up. So take the shovel as a measure. About the depth of the shovel down is how far we need to go. You just dig. You can see me work out. Now the great thing is, sometimes people will ask, what do you do with this grass when it's done? You throw it out, whatever. Actually, you just kind of put it upside down. Oh geez, what was that? Just a root. The grass will eventually die and just kind of rot, and adds a little bit extra nutrients to your establishing tree. You can save a lot of money as a homeowner if you plant your own trees rather than hire somebody. But I know that there's also some anxiety involved with planting your own tree. You're afraid that it might not take. Also, good garden centers will give you instructions on how to plant. I was taking a look at this, and the instructions actually that came with this tree are actually pretty reasonable. It says dig a bowl to, about 3 times the width of the container. Yeah. Remove container gently. The other thing too with handling these is that you don't want to be grabbing stalk from the stem. You always want to grab from the pot, or if it's a balled and burlap, from underneath. And the only time you ever really want to tug on this is when you're trying to remove it from the pot. So keep digging. And also we're contending with some roots from some of these other trees. Eventually the homeowner, I think, said he was going to be taking out some of these old lilacs to open up this space a bit and give this cherry tree some light. That would be a good idea. Typically cherries do need, actually for the most part, I think pretty much all fruit trees need a lot of light. And so some of this will be coming out probably next spring or maybe this winter. Let's see. Yeah, I think that'll be good once I... Now when you're digging the hole, you typically don't want compacted soils because the roots can't go into compacted soils. With one exception. The soil at the very bottom of the hole should be compacted because you don't want it really loose. So when this tree eventually starts to grow, you don't want it shifting and settling into place. You want to make sure the bottom here is really compacted. Also notice here as you go deeper, there's probably some of the natural soil. So you got some sand here. We're kind of up on a bit of a hill, and yeah, it's kind of sandy. Which again, no big deal. Let's see, how are we doing for depth? Okay. Make the saucer a little bit wider here. One last check. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit deep. This would also be the time to remove any flagging, any tags, because they can cause future problems. Awesome. Thank you. I don't turn it on right now. Let's just give me a soaker. That's good. Thank you. Okay, so we remove that. In a previous episode, I talked about the importance of getting rid of this junk. Sometimes homeowners want to leave the label in place so they remember what they planted. I think it's a great idea. Just don't leave it on the tree. Maybe get a popsicle stick, staple it to a popsicle stick and put it in the ground or something like that. All right. So this little support, it's like bamboo or something, that can just come right out. There. Okay, so now when we take the tree out of the pot, you don't want to be reefing on it straight up, because especially with the graft, although it's well attached, you can just cause problems when you pull the roots. Let's see here, maybe we'll try it like this. Just kind of pat the bottom, let gravity do a little bit of work for you. It's kind of awkward. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. This might be a two-person job, we'll see. Yeah, this might be a two-person... Hey, Dan? Yep. I think this might be a two-person job. I don't want to... It's in there pretty tight, actually. Surprised. Waiting for my assistant. Okay, if you can kind of just have one hand holding the soil, maybe have it just so you can see angle so we can actually see. There we go. And you know, don't pull. No, have one. Actually, have your hand like that, and then don't really pull. Just balance. I'm just going to try to let gravity do its thing. There. Okay. Good. Now let's see what we got here. Okay, I got it now. Awesome. Thank you. So now, the first thing you want to do is inspect the roots. You can look at them, you can smell them. You smell anything that smells kind of rotten or sour, you know you got a problem. I don't smell any of that. It's not too bad here, but there's a little bit of circling of the roots, and what happens is if a tree's been in the pot too long, the roots will start to circle around the pot, and that can be a problem. Because as the tree grows and the roots grow, they'll start to circle around, and eventually they'll girdle itself. The tree can girdle itself and cause some serious problems, and eventually becomes compromised and eventually dies sooner than it should. The roots here aren't really circling too bad, but if you have roots coming out to the edge, there's no harm in just scoring it a little bit. What that does is you are cutting the roots a little bit. What it's doing is preventing them from continuing to circle. If the roots were really thick, you could also just tease them out, just rough it up a little bit. Yeah, but all in all, that's pretty good. That looks pretty good. So put that in the hole. And see, did I measure it right? Actually, it could go down a little deeper. Okay, and then we just plunk her in place. Now, the trick with backfilling is you don't want to leave any air pockets. Probably shouldn't be too big of an issue here. So what we do is just little by little, just put the soil back in. And if you happen to come across any of the hunks of sod or lawn, just organic matter, I haven't really had a problem with just putting those right back in the hole. But for the most part, you want mainly soil. Another trick too is with the sod, rather than putting it in the hole, is flipping it upside down and putting it along the top when you're backfilling, and maybe that's what we'll do here. Now, another trick too to get rid of air pockets is as you're doing this, to soak it, or after all the soil's in place, because this is very very loose soil. It's not compact, it's not heavy clay, so because of that, it's pretty easy to avoid air pockets. But what you want to do is you want to push the soil in, and a few moments there I'm going to throw some water in, and that'll help move the soil around and help prevent any air pockets from forming in the root area. And then by kind of creating this bit of a slurry, what it does is that's good for right now. Thank you. In addition to potentially getting soaked, it helps the soil find the air pockets. And it also gives the tree its first little blast of water that it's going to need. Now the trick is, trees take a while to establish. Take a number of years. So you want to be mindful of that, and certainly keep watering. If we have a dry fall, which we haven't been having so far, but if we do start having a dry fall, you can water this, give it a nice soaking once or twice a week, right up until the ground freezes. So that's right into probably the end of November, maybe December, depending on how the season goes. So here's some of these clumps. We can just actually these clumps can also be used as a bit of a berm to hold the water in place for when the homeowner does water. And since we're on a bit of a hill, putting a bit of berm on this side might be a good idea. And then after you do the last little bit of backfilling of the soil, we can then put wood chips down. And I brought some here. This is old, let's see, a couple years old wood chips, arborist wood chips, just from one of the local tree guys in town. And when you're mulching, you don't want it more than a couple inches thick, so that's right now way too thick. And you also don't want to have the mulch right up against the side of the tree for a number of reasons. One is moles and voles and little critters, mice and stuff, can bury underneath in the winter, and they'll go and they can girdle the base of the tree. And I've mentioned that before in the past, and that's definitely an issue. Oh, a little centipede. So just do that. Make sure it's only about 2 inches thick or so. That should be good. Now, one thing I didn't mention is like when you're digging that hole, and the reason why is because this soil didn't really cause any problems, but if you were digging in a very heavy clay soil, what will happen is as you're putting that shovel into the ground, it can kind of shear the soil and makes it very smooth and very slick, and that can be a barrier for roots to invade into. So what you would simply do is, if you're in a really heavy clay soil, is when you're just before you start putting the tree into the ground and start backfilling, you would go and you just basically score up and scratch up around the outside of the hole you just planted, just to rough it up a bit, so it would help encourage root growth into that new soil once the roots start to grow, you know, beyond the area you dug. But again, that wasn't really an issue here, because the soils here are, although not a lot of organic matter, they're quite sandy, so that shouldn't be an issue. And just one last thing too, just about organic matter, is wood chips are good because organic matter helps increase the soil's water holding capacity, because sandy soils tend to drain quickly, which is good in the sense that you don't want rotten roots, you don't want water to pool, but the other issue is it may drain too quickly, so that could potentially be a problem for this site. So that's why watering next spring, and even right now until the ground freezes, will be particularly important for this spot right here. I'd say in about a year from now, I'd encourage the homeowner to get a soil test, just take a few samples around the tree and get a sense of what's going on as far as nutrition goes. And you know, the University Lakehead here in Thunder Bay, they do soil testing, and based on your plant that you're trying to grow in the soil test, they'll give you a very dialed in recommendation as to what type of fertilizer and what the amount of nutrients you need to keep that tree happy. So I think I'm just about done here. I'm going to snip that off in a little bit, and I think that's it. So till next time, my name is Jay Dampier for ThunderBayTrees.ca.